This is a thermoplastic thumb spiker. It's a commonly made, custom-fitted thermoplastic splint. We use it for patients with pain or arthritis at the base of their thumb, at the CMC joint. We use it for patients who have sprains and injuries around the MCP joint, like skier's thumb. And we use it for patients with some simple fractures in the thumb. It's an incredibly useful splint, and today we're going to show you how to make it. Step 1, choose a plastic. Here I have a range of different options, all within the 2mm perforated or fit colours range. There are obviously many other options out there. This is my own personal preference. Next, choose a template. This is the one I prefer. It's a classic butterfly template. Ask around, have a look online. There are many different options, and find one that works for you. Turning a two-dimensional template like this into a three-dimensional splint can be a little confusing. Just to make it clear to you, this edge here is going to end up fitting around the patient's IP joint. This dimension here, through the middle of the splint, is going to fit into the web space between the thumb IP joint and the index finger MCP joint, like so. And these two tabs, like the legs of the trousers, are going to fit around the front and the back of the hand to meet together on the back. This particular template fits a hand about my size, so if I'm making a splint on a hand that's slightly smaller, I can adjust the template to suit. I'll move it a little bit closer to the edge and start tracing. And each of these dimensions I can make slightly smaller. And slightly smaller again. And there you have the template traced out onto the plastic. I'm just going to trim just inside the line that I've marked so that I don't end up with pen marks on the finished splint. Follow each of these contours and cut off the excess like that. And trickiest part, just in this piece which is going to go in the thumb web space, I need to cut slowly right up in the hinge point of the scissors to make a nice neat little curve like that. And there's the finished splint ready to go in the hot water. But before we do that, we need to make sure that the patient's hand is in optimal position. That might, for some injuries, mean positioning a joint to protect a ligament or a tendon or a fracture. But if we're splinting just for pain or for function, then it's all about positioning so that the thumb and the index finger are opposable and in a comfortable position around about there. A low temperature thermoplastic like this starts going soft at about 60 degrees C. I normally keep my heat pan at around 75 to 80 degrees. Simply place the plastic in the water, and you need to wait a little while for it to heat up. If you lift up under an edge gently with a spatula, you can pretty soon see that it starts to move in that floppy three-dimensional manner. Pat it dry. Handle carefully, because it loves to stick to itself at this stage. Holding it like this, almost like a pair of trousers. I want to line up that curve underneath the IP joint here. Pinch it together. Pull it down into the web space like that, and pinch underneath the CMC joint. Make sure it's a nice smooth fit, a gentle stretch. Pinch together here around about the 4th or 5th metacarpal region. Come back and pinch, pinch, pinch all the way along that edge. And I'm just going to trim off the plastic that we don't need. And once again, check the position as the plastic hardens up. As the plastic cools down, it gets easier to pull it apart. The longer you wait, the easier it gets. Keep in mind, some patients have a very large IP joint compared to the size of their thumb. And in that situation, what you might need to do is just to split the top of the seam a little, like that, so that the thumb splint comes off. We can always reinforce just the bottom part of the seam, so you've got a little gap at the top to make it easy to get the splint on and off. Now we need to trim off the parts of the splint that are unnecessary, the extra plastic. And you might just want to round off the edges so there's no sharp pieces that could catch or irritate the patient's skin. It's obviously coming up a bit too high near the index finger MCP joint. We'll limit the index finger movement there, so we can trim that back. The wrist here, I can see it's a little bit too high on the back and is going to limit the wrist extension movement. Don't cut off too much though. Remember, you are going to be rolling back these edges for additional comfort. And then around the top of the IP joint, that might need to be trimmed down a tiny fraction, around about there. When it comes to rolling back the edges, the part that you're going to select, you just want to dip that edge into the warm water, and after 15 or 20 seconds, submerge in the warm water, the plastic becomes very soft and we can roll the edge back all the way around. This is going to make sure that the IP joint has no restriction to movement and that it is as comfortable as possible when the patient does move. And we should be good to go. And to finish that off all the way across to the little finger side and around the back, like so. Okay, finishing touches. I'm just going to cut a strip of plastic approximately 1 centimetre wide. And that's going to be my seam. And you can reinforce the whole seam, but keep in mind, if you want, you can just reinforce most of it and leave that little bit at the top that can gap, so the splint slides on and off more easily. Anytime you're going to stick plastic to plastic, scratch off the shiny outer layer. I'll do the same for my strip here. Fire up my heat gun. If I'm looking for a permanent seal, then I want an intense dry heat rather than the 80 degrees in the water. This could easily be 300 degrees or more. You can see how the plastic is getting soft. Then it's ready to stick on. Lay it on across the seam and gently tack it in place. Trim off the unneeded part and then push it firmly into place. And I've just left the top open so it slides on and off really easily. To put the Velcro on, we're going to scratch off the shiny outer layer, both sides of the seam. I'm going to cut a little tiny welding strip. I'm going to use self-adhesive Velcro, peel off the backing, a little bit of extra heat, place it where you want it and push it firmly into place. Now my little welding strip, heat this plastic up, stretch and stick and push firmly into place, flatten it down like that. One for the other edge. Push it into place, welding strip along the edge, and there we have a thermoplastic thumb spica Velcro strap, and it is ready to go. Let's try it on. It slides on nicely. Adjust the tension, aiming for comfortably firm. I'll trim the strap back to a suitable length, like so. And ask the patient to move the IP joint, move the fingers all the way up and down, move the wrist back and forward, and see if there are any trouble spots, any edges, corners, pressure points, because you can always adjust it with a heat gun. And there it is, one thermoplastic thumb spica. I hope you found that helpful. Leave any questions in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe as usual, and we'll see you next time.